Hello, YouTube land. This is Brent and Son coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Today I have some Bigfoot stories. One story, the first one, I got from a judge. He's up for re-election, so I'm not going to give the area he lives and his name because he's kind of concerned that he wouldn't get re-elected, and his wife is not too happy with him for calling me. I mean, she was okay. We talked for a few hours and what have you, but a very good witness, a judge. He's been a judge for a long while, and he, seen something when he was 17 years old. And anyway, we're gonna show that story. But I did alter his voice, so he teaches around the state and things like that, and he thinks that he would be recognized. So I said, well, we won't say the state. I'll alter your voice. There's lots of judges out there, so that's we're not going to give any more information than that. But very nice fellow, and I think you will like his story. It's very interesting with this Bigfoot doing some fishing and tool use. So. And then we have a couple other stories that we're going to read. One from Kentucky, and then we have a few little tidbit stories from another person, and a very, very interesting story about an injured Bigfoot. And I thought that was very, very unique. I've not heard anything like that before. But and whatever else we put in here. I don't know how many stories I'll put in, but there's something that I got to do, I got to mention before we get started on this, so please be patient. I had a flashlight company called Thrunite. Thrunite. They sent me a flashlight and wanted me to review it. I'm going to just give a shout out right now and just show you the flashlight. And I tell you what, I really like the flashlight, but I'm gonna make a separate video, and I'm gonna demonstrate this flashlight because it really needs to be demonstrated so that you can appreciate this flashlight. It's very, very awesome, I think. But you take this off here, the end, and put the two double A's in it, and you've got the button to click it on. Bam. Bzz. And what is so unique about this flashlight is that you have this button here. After you click it on here, you have this button that you can go brighter or lower, and you could do it just bright enough to read in the dark or something like that. Like sometimes I'm looking for something. I don't want to wake Dana up, and if I turn the light on, she's like, "Ah, you woke me up." No, and then she's not in a good mood no more for the rest of the next day. But anyway, I've been using it, to look in the drawer to find my charger and things like that, and it doesn't light up a big area. And then if I want it brighter, I click it once and it goes brighter and it lights the room up about halfway. And then one more setting, brighter, bam, and it lights it up really good. And then my daughter discovered this because it didn't have any directions in it. But she said, "Well, look what I found, Dad." I left it on the table in the kitchen. She pushed this down and oh my goodness, it's got a strobe effect on it. What a cool little flashlight. And I keep it kind of on the lowest setting, so when I click it on, it's, on the low thing where I can look close, read, or whatever. And, you click it on there, and then you can go from the lowest setting to the medium to the high. That's just the way I would use it. And it has a cool little clip on it. I'd clip it on my side, and I went out there and messed with my changing my stereo out earlier in the little truck that I bought. Or not changing it out, I was hooking up the antenna because whoever put the stereo in and didn't hook the antenna up, but it was perfect for looking around in there, and used it for hooking up some washer and dryer connections earlier, because that one video I did on the bird things, the from Texas, that 12 human-like bird things that was dancing on the tower, that woman, during that video, the power cut out, that fried the computer in my washing machine, and then my refrigerator went out, and then the toaster oven went out, the element in the stove went out, the car blew an engine, the van broke down, and then the dryer stopped working, and did I say the refrigerator? The refrigerator quit. All my appliances basically went down, and cars went down. Unbelievable. But I'm recovering. So anyway, Thrunite. You can read that. Thrunite flashlights. I'll do a review and kind of demonstrate it in the dark, but they sent this to me and asked me if I would do that, and I said sure. I'm going to take this squatching and fishing soon, and we're going to do some expedition videos and stories by the campfire, stuff like that. But anyway, thank you all for being patient with me, and I hope you enjoy these stories. We got the judge coming up first. His voice is altered, and then we've got some stories I'm reading from there out of the archives, and we have some very interesting stuff coming up soon too. God bless, and I'll see you later. If you want to, just tell us the story that happened when you were a kid.
All right. When I was about 17 or 18, we'd go rabbit hunting down these remote roads in Texas. And I was by myself one evening, just trying to spotlight some rabbits. And in the distance, there's a small bridge. It's for draining rice fields and such. And there was something on the bridge. I thought it was a coyote at first, but the closer I got to it, I could see that it had the structure of a man and covered in what looked to be coyote fur, the same color. And it was hitting his hand on something, and it was totally distracted. It was staying concentrated on what it was doing, and the closer I got to it, it turned its head, looked at me, and I couldn't really tell facial hair or anything because I was still that far away from it. It stood up and jumped off the bridge 8 or 9 foot down to the bank of this ditch. And I drove up. I had a .357 Magnum and a .22 in the car. And I spotlighted around in the ditch and the surrounding area, couldn't see anything. So I surmised that it was probably underneath the bridge, and I wasn't about to get out and go down there and look at it. I wasn't terrified. It didn't strike me with any kind of weird vibe other than I was surprised to see it. And I went down the end of the road and came back, and there was something in the middle of the road. I didn't notice at that time. And I got out, and it was a garfish, about, 22 inches long, and tail end had been cut off of it with what looked to be an old 7-Up bottle, and broken. And it looked to me he was using it as a tool, to either kill the fish or section it up so he could eat it. And I spotlighted the entire area and I could never see it again, and never saw it again after that. But I didn't go back out there by myself rabbit hunting after that. I always had somebody with me.
Right. Now, when you first saw it, was it hitting the gar with the bottle?
Yes, it was striking it.
Okay. So it was, pretty much like anyone does when they fish. They whack it in the head and get it to stop moving.
It had already cut off the tail end of the fish and was working on the area just behind the head. It was just odd.
So he was basically using a pop bottle as a tool then, wasn't he?
That's correct.
Wow, that's kind of interesting. That to use a tool, you have some intelligence, right?
Right, absolutely. And this thing wasn't massive. I'm guessing it may have been 6 foot, a little over 6 foot. Uh, I could not see muscles per se. I could see leg muscles, and I could see the muscles at the top of his shoulders when he moved. But other than that, it was the same color as a coyote here.
Right. Now, so he must have caught this gar and then jumped up on the bridge to have a flat spot to work on this. So was the bank that he jumped down on, was it kind of steep or?
Yes, it was. It went from the top, the surface area of the bridge, basically, maybe a foot below that, at a slight degree of angle down to a small, very small flowing stream. But when they drain the fields here, they use this ditch to evacuate the water.
Did it have much water in it?
No, it probably maybe had a foot, and it was probably 4 to 5 foot wide at the widest point.
So do you think that he got that gar from that drainage ditch?
Yes, I do.
So they were maybe going up into those low-lying areas to breed, correct?
Well, no, that's just the remnants of what's left when they haven't drained the fields.
Right.
And that's just a constant flowing little body of water, and they just live there, as do the other fish.
Yeah, because I know when I lived in Alabama on Lake Gunnersville, the gar certain times a year would go into the very shallow areas and mate. So I was just kind of wondering if that was possibly they were coming from a larger body of water up to this area. When you saw this creature, he was squatted down in the road. Is that right?
Yes, and I thought it was a coyote at first.
Right. And once he got off of that bridge, you no longer could find him.
No, and I didn't go looking for him underneath that bridge. Once you see something stand up and jump off a bridge, it just totally blows your mind. And I wasn't about to go underneath that bridge looking.
When you were looking at it on the bridge, did it have the typical sagittal crest?
It didn't. From my angle, see, he was looking. I'm facing like north, and it was facing west. When it stood up and jumped off the bridge, it was facing west. It never turned its head enough where I could see that it was conical.
Right. So you did see it from the side, though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did it look like his head sloped back to a kind of a longer skull than a human?
If it did, it wasn't much bigger.
Okay. Well, not all of them. Not all the reports, say that's the case. And sometimes when people see them from the front, they notice this big brow ridge, but it seems their head's round on the top. But when it turns sideways, the slope is at such a low angle. They only notice the pointiness of it when they're from a side view.
I didn't notice it being pointed. Top of the head may have been a little bit further in length from the eyebrows of a human. It wasn't drastic.
How long do you think the fur was?
I would be guessing it was long enough. Think back now, I can see around its hands. The back of its hands didn't have much fur on it, and I'm thinking maybe 1.5, 2 inches.
Okay.
But where a shirt cuff would be.
Now, the hair on the head, was it longer?
No, sir, it was pretty uniform except right there where the shirts collars would have been.
Okay. Now, sometimes here in Kentucky, people will encounter some Sasquatch that have longer hair on the top of the head, almost like a hairdo, and sometimes it comes down the back to a point.
I didn't notice that. If I'd have had more time and I could have been more specific.
Right.
I mean, I was close enough to it to tell you it wasn't a man.
Right.
And it did not look like there was somebody pranking me in some kind of suit of some kind.
Right. Yeah. How far were you from it then?
Well, I was in a 71 International pickup, and those were sealed beam headlights back there in the late 70s when I had this truck, and those weren't the brightest lights. I'm thinking when I first spotted it, it was probably 250 feet away. When it jumped off the bridge, I was close enough to it to tell that it looked like a humanoid of some type. I don't know, maybe 75 foot, maybe.
All right. So that's pretty close, Pretty close.
Well, it was totally determined on working on that fish. I startled it as much as it startled.
Now, this next story comes from someone in Kentucky. The Tall Hillbilly is the username. My family has a story that goes like this. My aunt, uncle, and cousin were in from Ohio to my grandmother's in Johnson County, Kentucky, out in the country. This is in the 60s. During the night, they were woken up by a scream they described as a high-pitched woman's voice and snarling outside in the yard. My uncles and my two oldest male cousins went to the door and held it from being pushed open by whatever this was. It took all of their combined weight and strength just to keep it shut. So this thing was pushing the door after it come up on the porch screaming and hollering. When my grandmother saw they were losing the fight, she yelled, "Duck!" and cut loose with her .38 right through the door. Whatever it was, it screamed out again and hit the door, causing it to splinter on the inside. Then it took off. By this time, my aunt and my cousins had gotten their other guns and took up defensive positions around the house, but whatever it was gone. In the morning, they went out and looked around, found nothing. No blood, no scuff marks on the porch, no tracks in the dirt, nothing. That was not the first time that they had the screaming and the hollering from these creatures. It's not the first time they had been heard in the area, but it was the first time it had tried to break into someone's house. As far as I know, no one ever saw anything to match or never heard anything to match to the screaming man or beast, and I haven't heard any recent events happening, but then again, I haven't been in that part of Kentucky in over 15 years. And he said, in Berea, which is south of where you are, he's talking about me, Berea is probably maybe 35, 40 minutes away south from me. So he said, as I'm sure you know, yes I do, thank you, there are some tracks in the sandstone down there, or down here, that were made during Noah's flood that I'm trying to find. Funny how a geologist from Canada found them And I live here, but I can't find him, LOL. I haven't given up yet, though. God bless you. And he gives his name, but he didn't really say whether I could share his name. So if you want to in the comments, you can share your name or however you want to do that. But thank you very much for the story. It's interesting. Sounds like to me you had a Squatch that was trying to get in the house, and I've had a few stories like that, and I bet that's why you sent this one to me. This story is coming from Stephen Godwin. Hi, my name is Stephen Godwin. I live in a small town north of Pensacola, Florida, in Cambria County. Thanks for taking the time to read my stories. Out of all the YouTube channels, yours is the only one I want to share my encounters with. I have 3 different encounters, and the last one I'm going to tell about is something that I have never ever heard anyone having an encounter like this one that I had. First encounter. This was back in 2007 around July. A friend and I were driving down Highway 29 about 2 a.m. in Walnut Hill, Florida. I didn't see it, but my friend did. He said, "Did you see that?" I was like, "See what?" He said he said that he seen a tall figure in the ditch standing upright. When the headlights hit it, he said it was covered in hair and saw it reach out and grab the speed limit sign and pull it over halfway as it went into the woods. The next day we went and took a look at the sign, and it's not until you stand by one of these signs that you realize how all they are, which means this thing he seen must have been close to 8 feet tall. So he's saying that the sign is a lot taller than you think, and that's certainly true. Okay, the second encounter. This was in 2009, October, near Century, Florida, around 5 p.m., I'm pretty sure. It was kind of cool outside. We went camping way back in the woods, almost 3 miles of a hike, because you can't get there with a vehicle. Where we camped was a small lake. As soon as we sat our stuff down, we heard what sounded like wood knocks. Then a few minutes later, we hear 2 or 3 huffs, is the only way I know how to describe it. It was from something large. It was also 50 yards away, but the woods were so thick you can't even see 1 foot in front of you. That was all that happened that day. The third encounter. This is the one I told you about that I have never heard anyone ever have an encounter like this. It was 2014 in the fall. The time was about 6 p.m. This happened in the woods near my home in Molino, Florida. I was going on a hike in the woods near my house. That's owned by a paper mill company. I was walking a few hours and normally see lots of deer on my walks, except this time I seen none. But at the time I didn't think much about it. As I got near this creek, I decided to take a break there and rest a few minutes. There's an old logging road you can see a few hundred yards down from where I was sitting. I heard something coming through the woods, so I didn't move, thinking it was a deer. So I waited to see as it got to the edge of the woods. I could see a large, dark figure of some sort at first. I'm thinking it's a black bear. But then I was like, it's too big to be a bear. I was getting a bit nervous when I hike. I always carry my sidearm. It's a Sig Sauer 40 S&W. So I pulled my gun out just in case. That's when it stepped into the road. It must have been 7 to 8 feet tall. Dark brown, that was matted and full of twigs. I'm getting pretty scared by this point, but I said to myself, I don't think it sees me. So I sat still and walked to the other side of the road. I noticed it had a limp, like it had been hurt. It turned to walk away from me down the side of the road. That's when I seen the strangest thing. Now, this thing basically come out of the woods, and he thought, ooh, okay, it's not going to see me after he was initially scared. And so this thing turns, and he's knowing he's going to be okay at this point. So basically, he lets it go, and as he's sitting still, hoping that, hey, man, this thing might not notice me. So he's seen the strangest thing. He was missing his right arm from the elbow down. For some reason, that's all I could focus on. After a few seconds, it turned into the woods. I waited about 30 minutes to make sure it was gone, then ran back home. All I could think of, for some reason, is trying to figure out how he lost his arm. I'm still, to this day, wondering the answer to that question. Well, that's all. Thank you for the time, and reading this. Your show is amazing, the best channel ever. And also feel free to use my full name. And he goes on to say thank you a little bit more and stuff like that. But anyway, I thought this was a very interesting story because when you think about this encounter, it comes out of the woods, it's limping, and then all of a sudden you notice that it is missing an arm. And then you think, wow, did it get shot? Did it maybe get in a fight with a Bigfoot? Did it get in a fight with a dog man? Did it get snake bit or something? Or maybe got a bad gash injury and got gangrene? How does it hunt from this point forward? Does it depend on other squatches to help it? Or can it still, even with this limp that it had, and an arm missing from the elbow down, does it still chase stuff down and grab it one-handed and snap its neck? Or interesting. To me, I hadn't really thought about a Sasquatch missing a limb before, but certainly they can lose a limb, it looks like to me. I really thought that was a very interesting story. A Sasquatch with a missing arm and a limp. My goodness. I don't know. They don't have Sasquatch disability out in the woods. That Sasquatch still has to figure out how it's going to survive. And maybe even whatever injuries this thing, when it occurred, maybe its hearing was a little not so well now. Maybe its sight isn't so well. Who knows? But usually they spot people when they come out of the woods. Usually you're not watching them without them noticing you very long anyway. So this Sasquatch seemed to have had something happen that was very traumatic to it. I guess it's a little bit of a sad story when you think about it. But it sounded like to me the Sasquatch was pressing on. And I want to thank Steve Godwin for sharing that story. That's very interesting. If anyone has a story, first before we go, that you want to share with me on this channel here and the audience, contact me at brentonson@gmail.com. Give me the story in email form and I'll read it, or send a brief description of your story and a phone number or contact information of some kind, and I'll call you and we will discuss it and then have you on. Bye.